APC chieftain Charles Enya files lawsuit to amend constitution so Buhari can run for third term. Presidency distances Buhari from Airpeace chairman Oyama's U.S. indictment for alleged money laundering and bank fraud. On the international scene, Hong Kong pro-democracy movement wins big at the polls. And in sports, new calendar as Chan 2020 clashes with club competitions.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. There appears to be efforts underway to convince President Muhammadu Buhari to change his mind and consider a third-term run. A member of the All Progressives Congress, APC in Ebonyi State, Charles Enya, has filed a lawsuit to amend the constitution to allow the president to serve a third term in office. Enya, who filed the lawsuit at the Federal High Court in Abakaliki, Ebonyi State capital, had served as organizing secretary to Buhari during the 2019 general election. In the petition, Enya calls the two-term tenure limits given to presidents and governors discriminatory. He's asking the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and the National Assembly to remove constitutional clauses hindering elected presidents and state governors from seeking a third term in office. The defendants in the suit include Mohammed Sani Omalore, clerk of the National Assembly, and Malami. It was only on Friday the president expressed no desire to seek a third term. He said he would not make a mistake of attempting a third term as he had sworn by the Holy Book that he would respect constitutional provisions. He also said age was not on his side. Nigeria's former Minister of State for Aviation, Femi FaniKayode, is crossed with leaders from the southern part of the country whom he has described as cowards. FaniKayode was reacting to a comment by acting chairman of Arewa Consultative Forum, Alhaji Musa Liman Kwande, over the weekend that northern votes in 2023 would only go to a presidential candidate of northern origin, regardless of political party affiliation. Kwande had appealed to northerners to vote for pro-development candidates and not those who were self-centered. FaniKayode has issues with that appeal, charging that alleged cowardice of southern leaders has given Kwande the basis for making such comments. The former minister tweeted that Kwande would not have, quote, had the nerve to speak like this, end quote, if not for the cowardice of most southern leaders. The presidency is making sure it leaves no stone unturned in distancing the president from the current ordeal faced by Airpeace chairman Alex Otte, who had been indicted in the United States for alleged money laundering and bank fraud. The president's personal assistant on social media, Loretta Onochia, says the president was unaware of Oyema's indictments because the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, had stated the federal government has not been informed. Oyema was charged with bank fraud and money laundering for allegedly moving more than $20 million from Nigeria through a United States bank account in an alleged scheme involving false documents based on the purchase of airlines. U.S. Department of Justice has announced on Friday on its website that Airpeace Chief of Administration and Finance, Ejirone Egaha, is also being charged with money fraud, bank fraud, and committing aggravated identity theft in connection with the alleged scheme. Oyema has denied all charges as false. He says all money transfers went through the Central Bank of Nigeria. Onacha said in a series of tweets that Oyema charges have nothing to do with the president. The 2019 governorship candidates of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, ABGA, and former group managing director of the defunct Diamond Bank, Dr. Alex Otte, has advised the country to find ways to reduce the cost of governance in Nigeria. Otte says the nation's economy needed to be restructured in a way that would enhance the current deplorable living conditions of citizens. Otte gave the advice on Sunday while speaking to journalists in Aba, the commercial nerve center of Abia State. The ABGA former presidential flag bearer commended President Muhammadu Buhari's administration for setting up a strong economic team chaired by Professor Charles Soludo and others. He has advised the government to ensure proper implementation of the team's recommendation at the end of its assignment for the prosperity of the country. A fire incident on Sunday has rocked the student community at the Federal Polytechnic, Bauchi, as an afternoon blaze gutted buildings housing some students and journalists at Gwalameju Student Village. Eyewitnesses say the fire started in one of the rooms at Tinubu Lodge before spreading to other rooms. Reports also say occupants and sympathizers had tried everything possible to put the fire under control but failed. One of the occupants of the lodge, a journalist with a Nation newspaper, said the fire has consumed everything he owns. A female victim said her certificates and valuables have been burned to ashes. She was wondering how she would start all over again and what to do. She said there is nowhere for her to go and all she had left were the clothes she was wearing at the time. Another victim, a journalist, a reporter with News Agency of Nigeria, said his equipment and other valuables had been consumed by the fire. An eyewitness said cooking gas had contributed to the escalation of the fire as most of the rooms contained gas cylinders which exploded in the rooms. No death was reported in the fire. Many traders in Nigeria complaining of increased prices because of the Nigeria-Benin border closure. Nigerians say they are paying more for food, especially rice. Now, chicken is reported to have gone up in price as well. The borders have been closed now for 2 months to prevent smuggling and protect local rice farmers from foreign competition. Kelechi Emekalam reports.
For nearly 3 decades, Uju has been in the cold room business. She started out with just fish and now provides a wide variety of frozen foods, mainly chicken. Over the years, she successfully scaled up her business, owning several outlets in the city. But she's had to shut them down following government's closure of its land borders since August. With the products scarce, Uju has been struggling to keep her business afloat.
We cannot see enough chicken to sell. You hold your money, you cannot see chicken to buy. Farmers will tell you, pay money, I will process it for you. You can pay money. Even 2 weeks ago, I paid money for one farm for Ibadan. Up to now, I haven't got that.
Beyond the scarcity is the rising cost of chicken in the market. Traders and customers are finding it increasingly difficult to cope with prices, which have soared by about 60%. Many here are seeking alternatives to chicken.
We don't see chicken to sell, no talking. This Nigerian chicken, we've been buying it 800 naira, 820 before. Now, this has gone up to 1,000 from company, 1,250, 1,003 now.
Well, prices of chicken has almost doubled in the market and it's very difficult to afford it. So right now I'm looking for other means of getting protein. I probably will settle for either meat, beef or eggs.
Nigeria relies heavily on imports for its 200 million population. Only 30% of the over 1.5 million tons of chicken consumed annually is produced locally. The land borders may remain closed until January next year. And with rising demand as the Yuletide approaches, meeting demands remain far-fetched.
Coming up, African stories, death toll rises in Kenya floods. And later, international news, Hong Kong pro-democracy movement wins big at the polls.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and African Stories. Chief Executive Officer of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, Adam Boehler, has announced his country's commitment to provide $430 million in insurance to advance energy security in Egypt. The project involves rehabilitating a natural gas pipeline and transporting natural gas from fields offshore in Israel. Boehler made these announcements at the Investment for Africa Forum in Cairo during a signing ceremony that included him and U.S. Ambassador to Egypt, Jonathan Cohen, Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, and Minister of Investment and International Cooperation, Zahar Nazir. The insurance will enable Noble Energy, based in Houston, Texas, to restore the 90-kilometer EMG pipeline running from the coastal city of Ashkelon to its destination in Al Arish, Egypt. It will also support for more than 15 years the transporting of 3 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Boehler said the insurance contract will strengthen energy security and bolsters trade. It will also support investment and improve quality of life. Tanzania says it has protested against Canada's seizure of an aircraft that was said to be delivered to state-owned Air Tanzania by summoning its envoy. Tanzania says Canada's action may be unconnected with a land compensation dispute. The Tanzanian government says over the weekend, the new aircraft, a DHC-8 400 turboprop, was impounded in Canada last week after an individual filed a claim in court against the country. The seizure case relates to a lawsuit filed by a retired Tanzania farmer who is suing for $33 million in compensation over what he says was the expropriation of his land several decades ago. Tanzania's Foreign Affairs Minister Palamagamba Kabudi says he expressed the Tanzania's government's disappointment and anger to Canada's High Commissioner. Kabudi has warned Tanzania could cancel its aircraft purchase order with Canadian company Bombardier after a new plane for the national carrier was seized. A Kenyan top government official says the death toll from a landslide caused by heavy rain in West Pokot region has risen to 42. Country Commissioner Apollo Okele says 11 bodies buried in the mud are yet to be retrieved. A leading Kenyan media outlet is reporting that a couple had lost 7 children in the disaster. Officials say the death toll is expected to rise as rescuers recover more bodies following the Saturday tragedy in West Pokot. Villages are reported to have been cut off by flooded roads and washed out bridges. President Uhuru Kenyatta has sent condolences to friends and relatives of victims in a statement on Saturday. More heavy downpours are expected in parts of Northeast Africa, where severe flooding and landslides have already caused deaths and major destruction. Aid groups said earlier this month at least 50 persons were killed and thousands displaced from their homes in the region since October. A month-and-a-half-long art exhibition has opened in Uganda at the Kampala Museum to showcase some of the most popular paintings by renowned Italian painter Leonardo da Vinci, who died in 1519. The exhibition is organized by the Italian Embassy in Kampala to mark 5 centuries of the death of the Italian painter. Reporter Leon Swenyong went to see the exhibition and brought back this report.
The Uganda Museum is usually home to the country's history, but for the next 8 weeks, it will hold some of the most historic art pieces the world has ever seen, from the Mona Lisa to the Last Supper, all works of one true artistic genius, Leonardo da Vinci.
In a glimpse, actually, you will have the possibility to enjoy Leonardo, its philosophy, Italian Renaissance, and through that, understanding what is Italian culture.
Uganda and Ethiopia are the only 2 African countries that will play host to the Leonardo da Vinci Opera Omnia initiative. It's a celebration of the 500th anniversary of the death of a man described as a relentless observer of the natural world. Leonardo da Vinci's pieces are the biggest artworks ever mounted on the walls of this museum. For the art lovers that have come to see these famous works, this is not just an exhibition, but an unprecedented artistic experience. All of the 17 pieces on display are digitally reproduced, but the copies show every intricate brush stroke painted by Da Vinci. The detail is evident in his Virgin on the Rocks and Saint Jerome in the Desert.
When you stand next to such a work of perfection, there is another world it sort of takes you.
For the organizers, this is an opportunity for the local artists to be inspired.
When you compare with the Ugandans, also they're telling their local stories, our environment, their interpretation of the environment, their interpretation of culture, their interpretation of the political scene that is happening. Had Da Vinci been in our lifetime, he'll be telling the same stories.
While this is the closest many Ugandans will ever get to the real collections, every work of art here will leave an impression of the great master Da Vinci.
When we return, international news. Hong Kong pro-democracy movement wins big at the polls. And later, sports. New calendar as Chan 2020 clashes with club competitions.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In international stories, Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement has won big in the highly anticipated local elections believed to be a measure of public opinion. The landslide win by pro-democracy candidates is expected to be a food for thought for the Hong Kong government, especially following months of demonstrations. Videos of residents popping champagne bottles late Sunday night circulated on social media as the first results of the district council elections were announced. A record-breaking 71% of the electorate cast ballot in Sunday's vote, considered a referendum on Carrie Lam's leadership. Hong Kong has been rocked by 6 months of unrest sparked by a now-scrapped extradition bill. Pro-democracy candidates won 385 of the 452 contested seats, leaving pro-Beijing candidates with just 59 seats and independents 8 seats. In the wake of the huge win, Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam says she would listen humbly to voters. Now to Colombia, where President Ivan Duque has opened a national dialogue which he says will include citizens from all walks of life. This after days of massive protests that have rattled the government. The conservative leader gathered mayors and governors from around the country on Sunday to launch the initiative that he believes will focus on 6 main topics, including equitable economic growth and corruption. But protest organizers disagree with him, saying the government has not done anything to address the demands of demonstrators who have called for an end to killings of indigenous and social workers, corruption and possible economic reforms. Some protest organizers want the president to first hold a meeting with the National Strike Committee made up of students and labor leaders. Demonstrators are aggrieved about the recently proposed labor reform and an uptick in the number of killings of indigenous and social leaders to structural problems and corruption that have been part of Colombia for generations. Billionaire and former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg has announced his running for president of the United States. Bloomberg joins a crowded field of 17 other Democratic Party candidates vying for the nomination to take on Trump next year. As it stands, former Vice President Joe Biden, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are the party's front runners. Bloomberg, a former Republican who has expressed reservations about his adopted party's leftward drift, said in a statement that he would offer a pragmatic option to voters in a campaign to unseat a president who represents an existential threat to our country and our values. Bloomberg says, quote, defeating Donald Trump and rebuilding America is the most urgent and important fight of our lives. China has already secured 870,000 5G mobile subscribers in just 20 days after the country kicked off commercialization of the super-fast mobile technology. Reporter Makay has more.
Nearly a month into China's commercialized 5G era, how many people are actually using 5G services on their phones? Sales data from industry leader Huawei and ZTE show over 4 million 5G cell phones have been sold since June. But China's top 3 mobile service providers say only 870,000, or 20% of them, have subscribed to 5G packages. Some users say they're hesitant because of the fees.
I still use 4G because it's relatively cheaper. I hope carriers can consider the affordability of 5G.
I would like to see the price not too expensive than 4G.
Providers say the package fee only looks higher than 4G. Price per gigabyte is actually lower.
Under 4G, we charge the users based on megabytes, but for 5G, we charge on gigabytes. Based on that, when 4G packages first came up, it's 60 yuan per gigabyte, and now our 5G package charge only 3 yuan per gigabyte.
Another question at hand is the actual coverage of 5G signals. Beijing has installed over 11,000 base stations, a large number of them still under testing. But salesperson at Huawei says many users decided to buy the hardware first.
Many of our customers want to buy a phone that can support 5G, so when the service is formally replacing 4G, they don't have to switch phones.
At the World 5G Convention, which just wrapped up here in Beijing, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology announced plans for large-scale 5G coverage by the year 2020. Beijing alone will increase its number of 5G base stations to 14,000 by the end of this year. Pricey or not, the era of 5G is already here. The new Beijing Daxing International Airport is using 5G technology for facial recognition. In medical treatment, Beijing's PLA General Hospital successfully conducted the world's first remote 5G brain surgery as early as in March. In sports, the Chinese capital used 5G live streaming for the 2019 Basketball World Cup this September, and is preparing to do the same for the 2022 Winter Olympics.
Still ahead, sports. New calendar as Chan 2020 clashes with club competitions. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News Sport. The decision to host the African Nations Championship in Cameroon in April next year has meant a complete overhaul of fixtures for the continent's top 2 club competitions and what is now an even more squeezed schedule for African football in 2020. The group phase of both the African Champions League and African Confederation Cup will now be squashed into just 2 months. It is expected to also have a major impact on domestic leagues, since no club competition matches can be played at the same time as the CHAN finals. A new calendar for both the Champions League and Confederation Cup has had to be drawn up. The Confederation of African Football has decided last week at its executive committee meeting in Cairo that CHAN 2020, the African Nations Championship for locally based players, will take place from April the 4th to the 25th. By the time the CHAN 2020 tournament starts, the 2 club competitions will be reduced to their last 4 competitors. CAF are introducing a single final at a neutral venue for the first time for both competitions. The Confederation Cup final is on May the 24th and the Champions League final at the end of May. Venues are yet to be settled. The Premier League are ready to turn to Arsene Wenger to help improve the standards of VAR. Legendary Arsenal manager Vanga was named as FIFA's new Chief of Global Football Development earlier this month. The Frenchman is also on the International FA Board's football and technical advisory panels, which make changes to the laws of the game and look at ways to improve football through its rules. Head of Referees Professional Game Match Officials Limited, Mike Rile, says is looking forward to talking to Wenger to see how VAR can be improved. VAR has been a controversial addition to the Premier League since it was incorporated into the division at the beginning of the season. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.